Hey, everybody.
Hey, y'all.
Welcome back to another fantastic edition of the His and Her Money Show. I'm Talib.
And I'm Ty.
And we make it our business to help you take dominion over your money and your life. Do us a favor. After you hear the jewels that are about to be dropped in this episode, make sure that you be a good friend and you share it with your people. Text them, email it, put it on your social media, and make sure that you tag us at His and Her Money so that we can show you some love right back. I'm excited about today's episode. We got some of our partners in them on back for another edition of the show. They've been here before. It's been a minute.
Yes.
They shared their journey a couple of years ago to becoming who they are known as today in the world.
Regular.
Rich and regular. I don't know if they're regular anymore. They're a little famous.
Rich.
They're a little more famous nowadays. So we're here to talk to them about a fantastic new book that they wrote called Cashing Out. And I'm excited for them to unpack all that they have because they some deep thinkers, man. They be thinking about this money stuff at another level. And I love talking to them and I love reading their stuff. So we're going to have a good time on this here episode. So ladies and gentlemen, get your notes ready to be written because you're about to get some jewels dropped upside your head today. So let's get Julien and Kiersten on so we can hear all their nuggets of wisdom once again. Hey, Julien. Hey, Kiersten. Welcome back to the His and Her Money Show.
Thank you.
Up, guys? It's so good to see you.
Yes.
Yeah, man. We are excited to have you guys back on the show. You are our peoples, even outside of what we do. And so, man, it was so cool to link up with y'all years ago and just to see the journey ever since.
Sure.
Y'all have been helping a whole lot of people thinking about money a whole lot differently. And so we appreciate the intentionality behind which you all do those things. But some people are being introduced to you guys for the very first time ever, right here and right now. So for them, can you say hello to them and then let them know what you two are all about?
Sure. So I'll take the lead. My name is Julien. This is Kiersten. We've been married for, how long has it been? 5-7 years?
Oh, my Lord. 6
Something
and a
like
half.
that. 16 years. Spot on. We started out, we met in 2012. Things got hot and heavy. We fell in love really quickly. And our very first conversation about money actually led to a breakup. But that breakup is what led us to really dig deep and think about who we are, where we've been, and why we felt so differently about money. And then we realized that we weren't the only ones who had that challenge, that there were a lot of other people, especially a lot of other couples who have the unfortunate habit of kicking the can down the road and just assuming that these problems will go away. And so we committed to solving those problems and to dig deep. And we realized that we wanted to use our talents and our skills and our passion to help other people avoid some of the problems or solve some of the problems that we had early on in our relationship. And so that led to the launch of our blog, richandregular.com, which we launched in 2017. And since then, we've grown that to a podcast. We've grown it into a video series that we host and produce a few years ago. And most importantly, into our latest project, which is our book, Cashing Out, which will be released in June of 2022.
Awesome. So listen, that's what we hear about. We're here about cashing out. But I don't want to go there just yet. I want to hold up. I want to pump the brakes a little bit, man, because we've just been watching your journey from afar, somewhat up close, ever since 2017 when you all came on the scene. And a lot's changed. This is something that you all were doing on the side to something that's now what you all do for real. You all have, I know the book is called Cashing Out, but you all have put all your chips into this platform called Rich and Regular. So let's go there for a second, because a lot of people, they have ideas that they either sit on or they put out there, but don't put a whole lot of energy into it. You all felt passionately enough about this work that you all decided to go all in on it. Talk about that process of going from an idea to try to help people on the side to this is going to be what we do for our life. Talk about that journey.
Ooh, yeah, it's ongoing, even though we've both been kind of in it for 2 years now. Julien more so than me. He left our corporate jobs earlier than I did. He left in 2018 and I didn't leave until 2020. But it's an ongoing journey because it's really asking you to confront an identity, one that you have probably been conditioned to expect as a a employee with a good job and someone who, makes that 6-figure job or achieves some sort of professional ambition into a role of service, into a role of creativity and inspiration. And that shift, depending on what day you ask me, what month, what bill is due, it can be difficult. It really requires you to dig deep and lean on those things that, aren't tangible, faith and God and like all of the, all the things that you need to be your whole self. But a lot of it on the non kind of mindset side was in good financial preparation. We always lived off of kind of less than half when we were both making, when we were both traditionally employed. And so we had a really nice savings account. We had a great investment portfolio. We had real estate that we could liquidate to ensure that we would give our business enough breathing room to actually grow. So now that we're right at that 5-year anniversary mark, we're not facing the same things that a lot of companies face, where I don't know what the stat is, but I think it's something like 50 or 60% of small businesses don't make it to year 5. What we're facing at year 5 is a decision about who we want to be for the next 5 years. It's not a matter of viability or, financial ruin or bankruptcy or anything like that. It's more of like, all right, what does the next phase of this look like? And it's a great place to be.
I'd add to that it's, going back to the original feelings that gave us the confidence to your point, take it from idea to this is something that we are going to make at the center of our lives. And for me, and I think for both of us, it was also just kind of paying attention to the sparks.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean, at that point in our lives, we were both doing well in our jobs, but I think the love for that work was just sort of fading away. Mm-hmm. And when we thought about the type of work that we did that made us feel alive, more often than not, it was the work that we were doing and the stories that we were telling through our platform. And then we shared the story in the book. One of the last projects that I worked on was actually back when all this entire world was just called influencer marketing. And I remember being a brand manager at the time and signing off hundreds of thousands of dollars to our PR team so that they could explore this influencer world. And we found some people, basically found this guy who we paid him to take a vacation with his 3 girls. And he was a father, Black man, he was a father, and went on vacation. All we asked him to do was to take some pictures, write a blog post, and to make sure that they tagged the brand in the process of going through that. And this was around 2016.
Yeah, this was a while ago.
And so after I cut the check, I wanted to know how much he actually got off that check. And it was around $10,000. And so when I thought about that, this is, again, 2016, the fact that somebody who was not a celebrity by any means would be paid $10,000 to take a vacation, knowing that even at the time, and I'm sure it's still relevant now, that around half of the people can't even afford to take the vacation that they've earned. I felt like the math ain't math and something ain't right here. And as good as I am, I know I can take 10 vacations and make more money having a great time than doing the work that I was doing at the time. And so I knew then, one, that it was possible, 2, that I had inside knowledge into how that world looked and that we might be able to, 1, use our passions and the skill sets that we've developed to turn that into something. So it was a combination of things that really got us started and gave us the confidence to say, okay, there's something here, even beyond just social media, that we could tap into.
Yeah, and for you, this message was particularly important for, and this is how you all launched the book or opened the book, was an alarming stat about what would happen to the wealth of African Americans overall. And I know that your message is for everybody, but I know you all have a real burden for the Black and Brown community to become more aware of this wealth game that you all are unpacking in the book. So talk to us a little bit about that, the roots that made you put pen to paper and come up with Cashing Out.
Yeah, we came across a study that said that if things continue, this was pre-pandemic. So if things continued the way that they were going with the racial wealth gap and the overall median net worth for Black families, the median net worth for Black families would be at $0 by 2053. So of all of the Black people in our country, the median net worth would be $0 by 2053 because we are going in the wrong direction to no fault of our own, right? So we came across that stat, and it was just alarming to think that there would be an entire population of us that just had no net worth, had no financial safety net, would not be able to avoid homelessness or an emergency if something were to happen. A lot of us are living paycheck to paycheck. And so we really just wanted to find ways to amplify the message that unless you do something that is considered countercultural or different from what you've been taught or what your parents may be doing or what you've seen other people do, unless you do something different, you could end up on the wrong side of that statistic. We wanted like the loudest bullhorn, the loudest venue, whether it was a book or YouTube or a podcast, to just start saying these things out loud and to make the data more approachable and realistic for Black families.
Yeah, I think, one of the biggest things that we also recognized was that as important as education and financial education was, I don't know that we believe, and even till this day, that it's the only thing that is needed to take us or to solve the problem, right?
Yeah.
This is a much bigger issue than that, but more often than not, whenever we would try to have these conversations with people, everyone would just default to talking about the importance of financial education and financial illiteracy. And quite honestly, our point of view on that was very different. I actually feel like what we need to do is to find more creative ways to make these kinds of conversations palatable and, dare I say, entertaining. Right. And so I'm an 80s baby, and I think back to Reading Rainbow and the role that LeVar Burton played in making reading something that, let's just be honest, right? It's boring. Most people talk about reading and books, and the very first feeling or thought that comes to mind is that this is boring. Very similar when you start talking about things like financial literacy and racism, people tune out. It's boring. It doesn't feel good. But as soon as they're done, they will turn on and they will watch the game, or they will watch food TV, or they will watch travel TV. And so our job was to say, all right, how do we find ways to make this content entertaining so that it becomes more of an everyday part of people's lives and it doesn't feel so heavy? And there's only so much you can do. Some of these things are just scary and horrific, but it doesn't mean that we can't make this stuff more entertaining. Because if there's one thing that we know, as much as we like to say that we all value education, we value entertainment. Right. Like you turn off, and y'all got kids, you let that Wi-Fi go down, you have some problems in your house, right? And we know that about ourselves. And so instead of beating each other up and making it seem like, oh, that's just who we are, embrace that and say, all right, well then how do we make this fun? How do we make this funny? How do we make it sexy? How do we make it entertaining? How do we make it delicious? All the things that we know that people really, really love. And that's really was the mission for us, again, not just as people who consider themselves activists, but also as marketers and in many ways entertainers. How do we make this stuff interesting so that more people are willing to have the conversation and then inspired to actually create the change that will improve their lives?
And you all did a great job with that. Your docu-series, I can't remember the name of it.
Food
but
on the
I
table.
just remember
Money on the table.
he was very
cooking
into
in the
it.
show.
He was like, oh my
like,
God. We were watching it.
Doing.
And it really, really did grab your attention. It was around food and cooking, as well as, financial topics that are important.
Because don't get it twisted. Julien is a classically trained chef.
Man,
unlike the rest of us.
I'm like, can I have some?
Okay, he was doing his thing.
Yes, but you all did such an excellent job with that. And this book, Cashing Out, Win the Wealth Game by Walking Away. Was that stat the premise of this book? Because I was shocked by that as well too. Like the median wealth of Black families will be $0 by 2053. Like what?
Yeah.
So was that the premise of writing this book?
It was definitely one of them, right? Because we would go to these companies. We often get brought into corporations or into different organizations to speak. And we usually mention that stat somewhere in our talk just to make sure that everybody understands the stakes. Like we're not just saying this because we want y'all to have nicer cars and nicer houses and for even something as grandiose as generational wealth. Like the stakes are that in our lifetime, you could be in a position where you're having to support not only your own family, but like several of your loved ones because they can't manage, unexpected expenses. And so, yeah, that was definitely part of it because a lot of people are surprised by that. But then we start breaking it down by, well, are you surprised when we're only earning 67 cents to a white man's dollar? Are we surprised when you look at corporate org charts and you see, 1% of Black people in C-suite and VP positions? when you look at some of the biggest companies in the world, from Google to Netflix, Amazon, all these companies that we admire, Facebook, they still only have 3 to 4% of Black employees. And these are some of the highest paying companies in the globe. So we just don't have access to the same capital or financing that our white counterparts have. And so it's not as surprising that our net worth will be going in the opposite direction when you add on all of the financial services and, you know, mortgages and predatory lending and all that stuff that comes with it. But yeah, it was definitely one of the motivations for at least targeting the audience of our book to Black professionals and Black families.
And I think it was also around just paying attention to what works. I
Yeah.
remember going to the barbershop, and I need to go back. But I remember going to the barbershop very early on after we found and really fell in love with learning more and sharing more about money and some of the lessons that we were learning. And I remember talking to my barber around some of the things that I was learning. I remember talking to him about investing and all this stuff. And it just kind of went in one ear and out the other. Like, he just did not care, right? But then, you know how it happens, like another barber who was in another chair started chiming in, and the conversation immediately went to crypto. And we started talking about crypto. And then I was having a conversation with my barber after that. And he said to me that, I was asking him, like, how did you learn about investing? Like, think back to some of your early memories. And I apologize if this is a little bit crude. You can bleep it out if you want to. But I asked him, I said, how did you learn about investing, or what are you investing? And he looked me dead in my eyes and he said, tampons. I invest in tampons, the companies that own tampons. Because if there's one thing I know, a woman is not going to go without tampons, and people are always going to be buying tampons. And I thought that it was such an odd, in slightly problematic way of thinking about investing. But if we're being honest, when I thought back, I remember hearing very similar lessons from well-intended men, right? This idea of lift your head, look around, look at the tires. There's a name on those tires.
Mm-hmm.
These are the types of stories that stick in our minds. And this man was like 50 years old, and it is impacting the way that he invests today. And so I had a choice. I can either bombard him with a bunch of information, documentaries, and books that I know he's not going to read, or I can do my part to come up with a different set of stories that I knew would be just as impactful to help replace the ones that he has and subscribes to and is telling other people. And that's one of the biggest insights that we have. And even when we were writing the book, we realized this is not about bombarding people with math or research. It's about giving them stories that are relevant for today, that are relevant for the way that the world and economics works today, through a cultural lens that makes it stick.
Yeah.
That's what was most important for us. And that's what we tried to tap into for the book.
Yeah, man. Babe, I don't know if you know this.
Talk to your barber too all the time.
I do. He listens though.
Yeah.
But there's not only cashing out the book, but there's cashing out the mixtape. They have a mixtape.
I didn't know that.
They have a mixtape for this book.
Wow.
And when Kiersten was talking, I don't know if this song made the mixtape, but there's an old school song called "The Stakes Is High" by De La Soul. And so that's immediately went into my brain when you said just how high. When we look at this stat, zero net worth by 2053, and right, and the disparity between the C-suite on all these Fortune 500 companies, that the stakes are high at that level, at every rung of the economic ladder for us. And financial education can go so far. And you said we have to be more creative, and we have to get the stories out, because that makes the information more palatable for the people sitting on the consumer side, right? You're speaking as thinking the philosophy behind the creation of content. For somebody sitting on the side of being the listener to you right now, and they're hearing that stat, and they're hearing how important it is for us, because as Kiersten said earlier, we're headed to this position through no fault of our own, through a lot of things that were put upon us. And we hear those stories quite a bit about all the things that went wrong, from redlining, et cetera, from the soldiers coming back from World War II, not able to get mortgages and build wealth through equity like other races were able to. So they hear all those things, how we were taken advantage of when it comes to life insurance. And for some, they're like, what's the point? Because the stakes are so high, there's so much up against us. Why should I try to win the wealth game? Why even go out to win when there's just all these obstacles that we have had to and currently have to overcome? What would you say to that person who's wondering, is it even worth the effort in 20 and 22 to try and win the wealth game?
Yeah, I would say this is actually a game you can win. Some of the other games that we plan aren't winnable games, right? Even if you think about our careers, we all know making it through corporate politics is a game, but we treat it like it's a game we can win. We just plan to keep playing forever. We keep planning to go for these big jobs and take on more responsibility and move our family and disrupt everything because we think we can win. But the data suggests that that's not going to be the case. They must want it that way, this way. That's what the data suggests, is that the systems want it to be this way. And so that the way that you win the wealth game, as we talk about in Cashing Out, is to start to untangle yourself from some of these institutions and systems and learn how to operate outside of them, right? Once you untangle yourself from the idea of lifelong employment and adopt an idea like the 15-year career, which we talk about in the book, or once you untangle the idea of just a basic budget and start adopting the idea of a purpose for your income. The purpose of your income is to get your time back, to get your freedom, to enjoy life outside of work. Then you can start to understand how this becomes a game that you can win, and you stop looking at it as just a numbers game. There will always be someone who is far, far richer than you. Like that is going to be the case for most of us. Almost all of us, there's always going to be somebody that's richer than us. That's not what winning looks like. Winning looks like being able to walk away from toxic situations without, worrying about how you're going to pay your bills. Winning looks like just once or twice being able to quit a job on your own terms, not because it got hard or because, your boss changed, but just because you're done doing it. Like just because I don't want to do it anymore. Winning looks like being able to wake up and enjoy a hot breakfast and a cup of coffee from a mug and not some metal thermos sitting in traffic. You start to realize like where the actual joy and fulfillment in life comes from, and you start chasing that. And that's a totally different approach to your days and your time. And I just want more of us to experience that so we have something to compare it to.
Yeah, and and I may flood this, but I think also specifically to Black professionals, I think it's about being willing to accept like opposing truths. And
Right.
one, for example, is like subscribing to standard rules of thumb that have not factored in your life's experience, right? And so we've all heard, if you've read any book about money or even just an article that's saving 10 to 15% of your income is more than enough, and that is the blueprint to having a successful retirement. But let's be honest, when we start to look around our families and think about our communities, how many people do we know that rule of thumb has actually worked out for? Secondly, when you start to reconcile the wage gap and the wealth gap, right? But just focusing on the wage gap, the idea that your 10 to 15% is coming, or let's say their 10 to 15% is coming off a whole dollar, and your 10 to 15% is coming off of 87 cents, or in the case of a Black woman, 63 cents. So these standard rules of thumb were not written for or with Black people in mind. And so we literally can't afford to follow these standard rules of thumb. We have to write our own rules. We have to have our own practices, our own set of circumstances and opportunities that we focus on if we want to win this game. And I think that's really what this book is about. It's one that actually acknowledges the role that race plays in money, and looks at that not just from a theoretical or a research perspective, but also these are the day-to-day habits, what we called rituals, RICHUALS, that you can factor in every single day that will lead you to leading a more fulfilling life.
So good. One of your chapters, chapter 6, the title is "Whatever You're Thinking, Think Bigger." That like shook me. Talk about that, because I think sometimes we think that we're thinking big. Are you saying that we need to think even bigger than that, than what we're thinking?
Yeah, because you just gave a perfect example how for some people that 15% that feels big, like, yeah, I'm doing it. But you're saying,
think bigger.
Oh, we pat ourselves on the back. Let's just keep it real. We pat ourselves on the back for saving 10%. We're not even, I mean, we know tons of people who are happy. They already checked the box. The brain,
like, I'm a good saver.
The part of their brain that part is already filled, right? Because they were already doing everything. I already have a financial advisor. I already contribute to my 401k. Never mind, they have no idea how much they're actually paying their financial advisor. They have no idea what they're actually invested in. And they have no idea what their growth is relative to what was actually possible. Right. And so when we wrote that chapter, we actually weren't even talking about that. But to your point, that is another way of thinking bigger. And if it sounds like I'm being specific, it is, because I'm literally talking to my brother right now. I hope he's watching it, watching this, because I've had this conversation with him. He's already checked the box. But that particular chapter was really about, I believe, like income, right? So many of us have just used all of these words interchangeably, income, salary. And it's like, no, there's a big difference. Salary is something that you negotiate with this one particular employer. Your income can be significantly greater than that. That can come from all of the other activities and things that you do day to day, whether it's real estate investing or creating a digital product or public speaking or working a side gig or any of those things. But yeah, that's certainly a part of it.
Yeah. And we also wanted people to break the narrative of the purpose of the internet. So many people use the internet simply to keep up with gossip news or to connect on these social media networks, keep up with your old high school classmates and your family. And so when they think about selling things online or promoting things online, they're still thinking about that network, that limited reach, versus recognizing that the internet is a global marketplace where billions, if not trillions at this point, of commerce and money is exchanged every single day between countries, 24/7, different languages. We have readers, as you all do. You have readers, supporters, viewers from all across the world. And so when we start talking about selling your labor in different places besides to just an employer, right? Selling goods and services, we're talking about thinking about the internet as a global marketplace, something that connects all of us, and recognizing that there is likely, 100 people on the low side out there that might want what you're offering. And so don't be afraid to put it out there. Don't be afraid to think beyond just your network in terms of what your income earning potential is. And certainly don't be afraid to think beyond what your current skill set is. There are also millions of teachers on the internet. So if you don't have the skill that you're looking for right now, or you don't have the talent that you're looking for right now, like, just know that there are a lot of people out there that are willing to show you how to get to be whatever or wherever you want to be.
So good. One of the things that we talk about often is the internet takes away the red tape. They can't tell you that you can't enter, and they can't tell you that you can't sell your idea or whatever your gift and talent is. It literally removes the red tape. And that's something that we tell our audience all the time, or our family, we call them our family all the time, is the internet has changed the game. You should be thinking about something that you can offer on the internet.
Yeah. Go ahead. Were you saying something?
No, I was just going to say that's why we love y'all. We're so happy to hear more of us saying that, but you'd be surprised how many people, in 2022 have never heard that. They still don't have LinkedIn's. They still don't. I can understand why you don't have a Facebook or an Instagram, but there are tons of professionals that have absolutely zero digital online presence. And it's not too late to start, but it does feel antiquated to go into the next realm of, the next decade, the next 3 decades with absolutely zero internet presence or the ability to market your experiences and your talent online.
Yeah, how do I say it? You all make it seem easy. I'm speaking from a bias because we've had conversations offline with no microphones or cameras, anything like that. And so you all make it seem like it's easy to have these big ideas and these big thoughts. I remember just early on when you were talking, I think I was talking one-on-one with Julien, and you were wrestling with the tension of having this knowledge about personal finance and wanting to help people, but trying to figure out, like, how can I do it differently than everybody in our industry is doing it. And it's one thing to think that way, but then you came up and you said, you know what, I'm going to blend cooking and money. And I was like, dang,
He was like, that was dope.
Like,
He was talking to me about it like,
I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, that makes total sense. Like, duh, right? But some people, thinking outside of the box is not easy, right?
Yeah.
So here's how you all are challenging everybody listening right now. For some, there's a group of people who have a level of ignorance when it comes to money, how to make it grow, how to manage it, how to steward it well. That's one group. There's another group who were once there but have pursued a knowledge, financial literacy, but now they're subscribing to, as you said, some patterns of thought or strategy that don't necessarily include all of their factors. So now you're asking us to think outside the box again. You're asking us to think even bigger. And thinking bigger, thinking outside the box are good in theory, but are hard in practice. So help everybody listening to be okay with not only thinking bigger, but executing upon those bigger thoughts in order to get to a better place financially. How do y'all do that? Because y'all make it seem super easy.
Is it that they make it seem easier, or do
They
they
do.
just execute?
That's what I'm saying.
thought?
But it's not
Because I
as
think-
easy to have a big
genuine
thought,
pause.
to have a big idea,
Yeah.
and then move upon it.
I
Yeah.
think some people overthink it
Yes.
instead of moving.
It's a genuine pause. And I apologize if it's comes across as rude. I'm trying to, because this is also something that I've struggled with personally. I think Kiersten too, but I feel like I struggle with a little bit more. I don't know if you have an answer to that at all. Because there's a part, I'll say this. I don't know. I'll share this. One of my biggest fears is to actually make it seem as if it's easy. I don't want anyone to think that it's easy. None of the stuff that we do is easy. If you've ever seen me on a stage, or we were just in Texas for a family event, and someone asked us like, "Man, you hosting and y'all did all that by yourself?" And I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Wow," but I don't have anything else to compare it to, right? Because I only have an intimate understanding of how I feel and how I think. But I will say, I learned pretty early on that you just have to get over, you have to become an idea factory, and you have to exercise that muscle like any other muscle in your body. And that's something that I have really started to work on. Like I could lose a couple inches around here, but this muscle is pretty in shape. And it's because I work on it every single day. And so when people talk about abs being made in the kitchen, right? Like brilliance is sort of made, I guess, in whatever. I don't know. I can't finish. I don't have my own idea. But the point is, I don't put crap into it. You know what I mean? And so I have the same level of discipline that you think maybe a bodybuilder has in terms of having a strict diet in terms of what they eat, that they have with their brain. And I think that's what a lot of people miss out on, is how absorbent the brain is. And it's not just the information that you put into it, but it's also the energy that you share and receive with other like-minded people. That is another way of just making sure that you continue to create and feel comfortable and confident sharing those ideas. And I think just like anything else, after a while, once you start to work that muscle, like it just churns out. Now your next job becomes to make sure that you're documenting all of those ideas, because once it's out there, if you don't act on it, you're just going to lose it, and it's going to be replaced by a new one. But all of that to say, it's really just about getting comfortable failing, because most ideas are going to be bad ideas. Most ideas are bad ideas. It's your job to churn through the bad ideas so that when you hit the one that seems to resonate, you can fully take advantage of it for as long as it has life.
Your brain is pretty sharp. I need to work on mine a little bit, but he's always
I got too many.
Oh my God.
But yeah, no, it's just dope because again, you always have to, I think the only way to be great is to realize that being good isn't good enough. Mm-hmm. And so I think that if you think you're good, right? No, I'm good. You are, but that's not enough. And so that's why it struck me a memory of a conversation before they had. This was pre Money on the Table, and this was even pre the book that you all wrote. And this was something that you were verbalizing to me. These outside the box ideas, but when you're inside of a industry or a niche, those industries and those niches come with rules. Those industries and niches come with borders and boundaries. And to go outside, especially if you're new inside this industry and you're trying to make your way, it's not easy to say, you know what, I'm going to just change all the rules and do it my way. And so that's the same way that you all are challenging us with our personal finances, because even back, and we'll link the episode where Julien and Kiersten were here before, the way that they went on their financial journey, it wasn't this A to Z thing that was pre-described. It was a journey that they created and personalized for themselves. And so the way that you all are encouraging us to now take it to the next level with not just getting stable or getting quote unquote financially independent, but to be in control, to gain control. Like you just said, this is a game that we can not only play, but this is a game that we can win. We can do some things and win.
We can't afford not to play. Yeah.
The stakes are so high. So I just love how y'all are pushing us to not only think differently, but to strategize differently as well through this book.
Yeah, for sure. You all talk about putting your money to work and how it's important to learn how to invest your money. Talk about that a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I think one of the most, what's the word I'm looking for? One of the most humbling aspects of being a Black person in America is recognizing how hard we work, how creative we are, how we built this country. But I think there comes a point where we take that narrative to heart and we feel like we have to work hard. We take pride in the fact that we work so hard, that we build things without recognition, and that it just becomes part of our dialogue. And what we're trying to teach people, like, there is honor in hard work, but that's not all you're here for. That's not how you should spend your one life on this earth, right? Like, the idea that our money can work harder than us is something that's a new idea for a lot of people, because it feels like, we've been told we all we got. We got to keep doing this. We got to keep struggling and busting our butts. But the idea is that actually your money won't ever get tired. It won't ever get burnt out. It's not ever going to grieve. It's not ever going to feel, sick. It just works. It just like that's the economic system that we were all kind of put in. And so investing is a way to opt out of the narrative that you have to work hard forever. Like, there should be a point where you can stop, even if it's just temporary, right? Maybe you don't want to retire early. Maybe you don't want to retire at all. Maybe you just want to work forever. But there's still going to be them weeks, those months, those periods where you're going through something and you don't want to have to think about it. And that's what investing allows you to do, is to honor your body and your emotions and your feelings and rest during the periods where you need it.
So you all worked what you all wrote in the pages of this book, and you all had a corporate career, and you all, through that corporate career, positioned yourself to be able to transition into entrepreneurship full time. But you all worked hard. You all worked strategically. You all didn't just do it randomly and just say, you know what, I got this great idea and we're just going to go. You all had to be in a position to be able to just to take a chance. So that's why you're pushing us in that direction. So somebody who's right there in that 15-year career that you all outline in your book, what are some of the things that were of super importance back in your corporate America days that allowed you all to be able to be in control of what you all are doing now?
Because that's a good question, because there are people right now that are in their careers and they're working towards whatever the case may be. How should they be thinking? What should be the thought process to get them to their next?
To get the power back.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things that we did early on, or I should say in the middle stages of our corporate career, was to build streams of income outside of our jobs. And I think that's especially important for Black professionals, because I found so many people who take such tremendous pride in their jobs, how much, like, who it's core to their identity. They refer to themselves as I earned six figures and those kinds of things. And while that may be worthy of celebration, I think you still owe it to yourself to say, relative to what, right? You're successful relative to what? And it's not to diminish yourself, but it's to also understand where you might be earning more, right? There's data that has consistently shown, especially for people who stay with one particular employer for beyond 3 or 5 years, that you will earn less than those people. And I think if we're just, again, being honest, we've seen it. Right? You've been that person who's been at that company for far too long, only to come in and watch someone come in off the street, as we say, and earn significantly more, right? And so after a while, you just owe it to yourself to say, hey, I'm tired. I worked this hard. I've been working towards a promotion. I've been trying to get this big job. You take more L's than you do W's, right? Through that process, you complain. I think, especially for Black professionals, many of us complain about the biases and the issues that we see in workplace, but we don't necessarily take emotional stock of what impact that has on us personally, or what impact it may have on your ability to raise your children a certain way, or the impact that it may have on your partner. And so I think people owe it to themselves to build streams of income outside of work, so that you can say, hey, I worked 3 hours over the weekend and I was able to generate this much. I worked 5 days and dealt with all of this stuff, in many cases BS, and I was able to earn this much. Now, even if what you did outside of work isn't as much as what you've earned there, it's a seed that has the potential that if you keep on doing it and you keep showing up 2 years, 3 years, now you have something that you can realistically compare it to. And that's what happened with us. I remember fighting for a $10,000 raise during my last years. I mean, fighting and doing everything that I needed to do to try to get that job, and still being given a responsibility promotion and a promise to get up and swing again the following year, right? Meanwhile, we'd reached a certain point in our business where there were things that we were doing that, one, we enjoyed, that tapped into our purpose and things that we were proud of in terms of being able to serve our community. And we were able to earn significantly more than $10,000 in like just a number of days, right? And so when you compare earning $10,000 on a job, which again at the time was a huge raise and I was really fighting for it, but that would have been stretched out over 12 months, versus as an entrepreneur being able to do that for work that we enjoy doing, and it really only took us a couple of days. Didn't start out that way, but we grew to that point. And I think a lot of people owe it to themselves to be able to say, hey, if you're being paid well at your job, that means you're really good at what you do. You owe it to yourself to sort of decompartmentalize or break down that skill set and to figure out how you might be able to monetize that skill set outside of work. Because corporate America, is painful as it can be for a lot of people, is a great training ground, right? We just don't need to make it or employers our only customers. You can find other customers outside of that 9 to 5, outside of that job, and be able to use that as better ways to supplement your income.
I think that's an important tip on the income side, but on the investment side, I think one thing that people fail to do in the peak of their career is open an investment account that is not a retirement account, right? A lot of people still have all of their investments funneling into a 401k or a traditional retirement account. And what that conditions you is, one, you're only investing on payday, right, with pre-tax dollars. And two, you're feeling like you can't touch that money until you're in retirement age. But the way to accelerate and possibly lower that retirement age is to create a taxable brokerage account where you're investing any money that's left outside of your budget. You know, if you get paid every other week and you have money at the end of the month, you can put that in a taxable brokerage account instead of a savings account that doesn't earn you much interest. Or you can, any windfall money that you get, invest in on your own. I think the idea of separating your retirement and your investing from your employer is a really important step to make towards becoming a person who doesn't rely on employer wages for income.
Good stuff. Good
I hope
stuff.
y'all wrote that down. I hope you all take action on that. Very, very good.
So tell everybody before we close this thing out, what they will find when they go out and get their copy of Cashing Out.
Absolutely. So we think of Cashing Out as the blueprint for career and financial freedom, especially for Black professionals. I think it's relevant to anyone who is looking to leave the rat race and move into a more fulfilling life, or even just a life of entrepreneurship. But you're going to find our story. You're going to find stories of other people like you or like us that have done what we've done. Some of them have done even more than what we've done. But I think what it does is it gives you relatable examples, right? We're not talking about the big, crazy stories that are nice to look at, but you know you'll never be able to achieve those. We're talking about real people who are able to do remarkable things, us included. And you also get a blueprint, right? We have rules and rituals at the end of every single chapter. There's new rules that are designed for people like us. Rituals, as we said before, daily practices, habits, and advice that you might get from a best friend or a big cousin who has done something that you really want to do. We've written that into every single chapter of the book. And so it'll be available wherever books are sold on June 14th.
Man, I want y'all to, before we go, to talk about this, the importance. We talked about how high the stakes are. You all aren't just husband and wife, but you all are parents. You all have a son.
It's just like Julien.
It was just like Julien.
Yeah.
And
you just carried the baby.
I didn't do nothing, man. Gene just failed me.
So did you all find some of your fire and motivation from parenthood as you all were building what we find in the pages of your book? And for those who are listening, who are parents and otherwise, what's your advice to them on just why now is the time to get serious about cashing out?
Yeah, we dedicated the book to Bo because we were hoping to, first of all, he gave us a lot of energy to write it just because of who he is. But we're hoping to create a more fair and equitable world for him. And we know how tough it is for us. We know, like you said, what stakes we're up against. So when you think about our children, if we want them to have a fighting chance in the world, we got to start doing some of that work for them. We got to start finding our voice to make sure that they are entering into systems that know that they exist, that know that they're worthy and worth it, and that they know who they are, that they know that they don't have to go into these workplaces or institutions looking for anyone to validate who they are. And so for us, cashing out is incredibly important for parents. It's one of the best gifts that you can give yourself and your child, is to recognize that your time is the most valuable thing, as well as like your power and your worthiness.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I hope y'all took notes, man. Tell everybody how to plug into your blog, your podcast, your YouTube show. Put it all out there for folks.
You can find us at richandregular.com. We also host the Rich and Regular podcast. We have a YouTube where we publish Money on the Table, our digital series. And then we're on all the socials at Rich and Regular: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, everything but TikTok. We don't have no TikTok.
We're not there yet. I don't know if we'll ever be there, but we're not there either.
Don't look for us there.
We appreciate y'all, man. Julien and Kiersten, thank y'all for coming, helping us think better, helping us through your new book, Cashing Out, strategize better, and just taking the time to share all this with our audience.
So we'll have all the links in the show notes as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
We love y'all.
Love y'all too.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another fantastic edition of the His and Her Money Show is in the books.
I felt like I was going to church a few times there. I was like, yes, right. I want to say amen a few times.
You did. I saw amen creeping up the side of your neck.
Man, it was putting chills up my arm.
Yeah, they told y'all they was going to come on and drop game, and that is exactly what they did. The book is called Cashing Out. All the links to everything that they mentioned are in the show notes of this episode. If you're listening to the podcast, if you're watching us on YouTube, look right underneath the video in the description box, and you will find the links there as well. And remember, we got more awesome stories, more relatable stories just like this over at our website, hisandhermoney.com. That's all we got for this time, guys. Until next time. Peace.
Bye, y'all.